Come in, all who long to know how to love the world, how to keep eyes open, hands unclenched, arms wide, breathing deeply in and out. This is a time to practice because there is still so much good and beauty and joy, but it can be hard to keep telling this tale with all the news and the wind and the rain and the trembling earth. Who wants to love this life? Anyway, come in, all who teeter on this edge of cynicism, broken-hearted, and trying still to remember laughter and kindness and the chance to be alive in these days when so much is at stake. In this place, we remind each other why we persist, giving each other courage to take this path that is not always easy, to keep practicing this love that cannot, will not let us go and still calls us on. Come, let us worship together. Those words by the Reverend Gretchen Haley. And now, quite a contingent is going to lead us in one of my favorites, when the Spirit says, do. Anything I should tell them? Oh, yeah. Well, you need mine.
This hymn is a little unfamiliar to some of us, so we are going to, the choir and soul singers are going to sing the first verse for you, and then we'll repeat that first verse. And if you want the music, it's in the teal hymnal, 1024, but I think it's easier just to use a sheet of paper. And so we'll sing it as it is on the sheet, but at the end we'll go back to the first verse and do that again.
When the Spirit says do, you got to do, oh Lord.
Usher, come forward to light the chalice and lead us in the words, please. Oh, please stand and then remain standing through the doxology. This is not symbolic of our congregation's ability to keep the flame lit. We just need a new candle.
Let this flame be to us a symbol of the wholeness we seek.
Its brightness dispelling gloom, lighting a path to faith and hope.
Its glow reminding us of the sacred bonds that link us to all living things.
Its radiance calling us like justice and peace upon the world. Good morning and welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm the Reverend Susan Milner. It is truly my honor and it's my pleasure to serve as interim minister to this historic and vital congregation. When we stand here, we gratefully acknowledge the existence of the Patuxet Wampanoag people on whose ancestral lands we gather today. We commit to support and honor their history and culture, and later in the spring we'll be hearing some ways to do that. I want to welcome all of you, members and friends, long-termers, short-termers, newcomers, young and old. I hope our kids know that we are so glad to have you here with us in this first part of the service. I feel like I get to see you, and I think everybody else feels that way, and I hope you always remember these moments so that you come to see this church as your church too. Whoever you are, any of you, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, we want you to feel like you're part of this congregation. We want you to feel really at home here for this hour and for any other hours that you choose to be here. We want our folks that are with us online to feel welcome because we consider you as much a part of our congregation as anyone else. Everyone here is invited to coffee hour following the service in the assembly hall, through this door, through the parlor, and all the way down at the end of the hall. And if you're a visitor, and if you take one of the red mugs at coffee hour, we can have a chance to notice that you're here and to greet you warmly. I want to remind you just of one thing for an announcement today, and that is that after coffee hour or at noon, whichever one seems to come first, Reverend Rob Kinslow, who's with us this morning, is going to be starting his Theology of Ministry. That's what it's called. Session. What? Yeah, Theology of Ministry. And session for adults, and they can just show up, right? Yeah, so please, it'll be, if Rob does it, it'll be good. And so now, since our kids have Reverend Rob here and some magic for the hour, we're going to let them go and sing them out to Go Now in Peace.
May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
All right, this is our Sunday for the month to do spoken joys and sorrows. And so we invite you to come forward if you feel moved to light a candle and tell us who you are and very briefly say what your joy or your sorrow or concern is today. I'm going to put this mask on and stand over here and let you hold handle the microphone because I could have the very beginnings of a cold. I'm not sure, but I don't want to risk giving it to anyone else if I do.
I don't want to be the only one we're talking here. May sound trivial, but it's not trivial. A couple of weeks ago, our friends lost their dog, and her name was Sophie. She was a wonderful, beautiful, gentle, sweet, kind dog. And she was my dog's best friend for 14 years. They were adopted on the same day, they were the same age, the same weight. Every time they saw each other, they kissed. And it's really important to have a dog in your life, I think, or a pet. It's so much love, so much unconditional love. They just love you. And there's not one mean bone in their body. And really enhances your life to have a pet. So here's to Sophie.
I'm John Lehman. Many of you know my wife, Cindy Ladd Fiorini, and this is my sister Joy Sawyer. And we're lighting a candle today for our sister-in-law Carol, who is in her last few days. And just hope and love in our hearts that she goes peacefully.
I'm Katie Fair, and I'm lighting this candle for my sister-in-law up in Vermont who was recently diagnosed with breast cancer, and she's just started chemo. So.
White candle for the joy, sorrows, and concerns that go unspoken but carried in our hearts. I'd ask you to join, please, in a spirit of prayer or meditation, whatever kind of attention you garner in quiet moments. Spirit of life and love, we give thanks for this time and this place of renewal. We hold in our hearts all of those lifted up today, all of those who our people are concerned about, worry about, care about. We lift up so many across the nation and globe, including the family, the friends, tribe of Next Benedict. Grant us the courage to continue on the journey, the courage to speak up for the well-being, the acceptance, the humane treatment of others and ourselves and the planet. May we forgive each other when our courage falls short, and may we try again. Grant us hearts to love boldly, to embody our faith and our values in loving words and deeds. May our hearts open to embrace humility, grace, and reconciliation. Grant us the ability to learn and grow, to let the spirit of love and truth work its transformation upon us and within us. To this we add the silent prayers of our hearts. May our hopes and dreams take flight on the wings of love. It has seemed like a hard week, a week with a lot of cruelty in the world, and that makes me especially grateful to be part of this community, to be part of Unitarian Universalism. However much we flail around sometimes, love is at our center, and that's really, really important. Love is at the center of this congregation, and I believe it's at the center of the work you do. And again, I'm so aware of things that are happening, things being planned, things being cared about, people trying to make things happen. Thank you so much for what you do. All of us are grateful, I hope, for each other. The morning offering will now be given and gratefully received. Two short readings today. The first one is by Cornel West, who is the Diedrich Bonhoeffer Chair and Teacher of African American Critical Studies at Union Theological Seminary. I was lucky enough to do an interim in New York City and had several Union students in the congregation I served, and I can tell you that they were getting very well educated. We need to question the powers that be, the courage to be impatient with evil and patient with people, the courage to fight for social justice. In many instances, we will be stepping out on nothing and just hoping to land on something. But that's the struggle. To live is to wrestle with despair, yet never allow despair to have the last word. And the second reading is by Paul Hawken. When asked if I am pessimistic or optimistic about the future, my answer is always the same. If you look at the science about what is happening on Earth and are not pessimistic, you don't understand data. But if you meet the people who are working to restore this earth and the lives of the poor and you are not optimistic, you haven't got a pulse. What I see everywhere in the world are ordinary people willing to confront despair, power, and incalculable odds in order to restore some semblance of grace, justice, and beauty to this world. In the years following World War II, existentialist writer and philosopher Albert Camus returned to Tapasa, the ruins of an old Roman city in Algeria where he had loved spending summers when he was young. His first return proved disappointing, though, for what he found was an ancient city locked behind fences and under guard. Try as he might, he could not recapture the feeling of pure joy and freedom that he had had there as a child. Now, years earlier, when fascism had spread across Europe, Camus had joined the French resistance. Throughout the war, he edited an underground publication called Combat, meant to give courage to those who were resisting tyranny. The root of the word courage is core, which means heart. And to gain courage is to recover the heart to act. According to Camus, even in the worst years of the madness under fascism, the memory of the sky of Tapasa never left him. There he wrote, the world began over and over again every day and every new light. His second return to Tapasa was different. This time he realized, yes, the ruins had changed, but so had he. This time he, instead of trying to dwell in the past, he looked to recapture just a moment, a memory, a feeling. In his short story, Return to Tapasa, he writes, I found what I had come seeking. He uncovered again that core of truth, of life, of love that had carried him through the worst, most threatening, most chaotic, inhumane of times. He writes, in the midst of strife, I found there was within me an invincible love. In the midst of tears, I found there was within me an invincible smile. In the midst of chaos, I found there was within me an invincible calm. In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer, and that makes me happy. For it says that no matter how hard the world pushes against me, within me there is something stronger. My friends, we live in chaotic times when foundations such as democratic government rooted in Constitution, separation of church and state, are threatened by those who would leave them in ruins. As we wind up a month of the theme of justice and equity, the number of topics that I could have preached on is long. Indeed, as an example, just a few days ago, the Alabama Supreme Court Chief Justice thundered his justification of another body blow to reproductive rights with language about the wrath of a mighty and judging God, his religion, his worldview. Times are tough, and they're likely to get tougher, and we will all individually and collectively need to answer what we can do, what we're willing to do to support what we believe in. But we are also human creatures with minds and hearts and bodies and spirits and needs, and we sometimes feel overwhelmed and exhausted. If a few years ago we used to talk about compassion fatigue, we could now talk about justice fatigue. It's essential that we care for our spirits, that we remember why this journey, though hard, is wondrous and worth our love, worth sacrifice. To be able to act, we have to remember that what we do, however inadequate it feels, is important in the long run. Call it developing historical perspective, call it being hopeful or faithful, call it what you will, but let us know that for all the steps backwards, moments of progress matter. The historian and activist Howard Zinn said that having hope in difficult times isn't foolish, but rather grounded in the fact, these are his words, that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, kindness. If we only concentrate on the worst things, we lose our will to do anything. So that even as the Alabama Chief Justice rants about God's wrath and quotes 16th and 17th century theology in his legal decision, think about this. Every week we gather in this meeting house next door to the town hall, knowing that for our ancestors in this church and state were so intimately intertwined as to be inseparable. That's the way it was in the 16th century in Massachusetts. Every citizen paid taxes that supported the church, this church. Yet after generations of questions and change and court cases and ministers who dared to speak out and lay people who made brave decisions, many among our Unitarian and Universalist forebears, the two were set apart. And from the road, one of the first things, at least I noticed, was that the town hall and the church, they look like part of a set. They look like part of a set. But we know that the few hundred feet between them are a long distance. And have to be. And we embody that distance in our deep Unitarian Universalist commitment to freedom of religion. We have been where that Alabama judge is centuries ago. We have moved on and we will not go back. There's an invincible summer at the heart of freedom and the love of freedom, and it will not be rolled into the winter of a shrinking soul or a shrinking nation. And any of us can think that what we do, what we can do is so small, so insignificant that it's not worth doing. Any of us can feel like whatever we do, we fail. We fail to save things. And in fact, we think about our own actions that way even when we know how much difference one other person can make to us. The Dalai Lama had a typically wry take on it when he said, if you think you are too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito. I've done it. True humility, which is understanding our place in things, reminds us that none of us bears the burden of the future alone. We all hold it together collectively, and that's important to know, to realize if you're inclined like some of us to codependency. Clarissa Pinkola Estes reminds us ours is not the task of fixing the entire world at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. What is needed for dramatic change is an accumulation of acts, adding more, continuing resistance. And these are my words. When it works, is a spirit coming from all of us, a spirit that will do, a spirit that will sing, a spirit that will shout, and that joins in a force greater than the sum of the parts. And sometimes that ability collectively to resist is so surprising, so creative that it catches oppressors unaware. Singing can even be a spirit-filled act of resistance. When a military junta was ruling Uruguay from 1973, carrying out such torture and repression that hundreds of thousands of people fled the country in exile, the government went so far as to target classical music as subversive. Indeed, you might appreciate this, Ed, it canceled a performance of Ravel's piano concerto for left hand because, well, it just sounded too leftishly dangerous. I hate to say it, but I have no trouble believing that in 2024. What could people do? What they did was buoyant. At soccer games, when the national anthem was played, the crowds mumbled. They sang very enthusiastically until they came to one line, Tyrannos temblad. Tyrannos temblad, may tyrants tremble. And they belted out those words while waving national flags, and then they mumbled the rest of the song. What a dilemma. What was the government going to do? Arrest everybody at a soccer game? Or cancel the national anthem? In the end, they had to put up with it. Small acts of resistance. Until in 1985, the dictatorship finally lost power and a democratic government was established. The brilliance of the action was that it put those who would repress others in an impossible situation in which acts of power against their opponents exposed their own foolishness. Singing is such a human act, and in the moments of greatest discouragement, if we endure, persist, we do it because we can maintain our humanity. We can maintain a way to nurture our bodies, our minds, our souls, and nowhere has that been more visible recently than Alexei Navalny, the Russian dissident whose life came to an almost inevitable yet shocking end in a brutal Russian prison in the Arctic Circle several days ago. For daring to challenge a repressive regime, for daring to try to inspire people to do all they could to seek a freer, more just and equitable society. Navalny had been threatened, vilified, attacked, and finally, a few years ago, poisoned by the state. When he managed to get to Germany and seek medical treatment, he recovered from the poisoning, at which point he continued to speak out, and eventually just turned eastward and returned to Russia and walked through the gates of an airport knowing that he would be immediately arrested. His contribution was always to expose Vladimir Putin and the Russian state for what they are, so that people will demand a better country. But during those long months of imprisonment outside Moscow, the first prison, Navalny sought to stay connected to the human world in any way that he could. He read 44 books in English one year. He clung to the letters that he was able to receive from others. In his last message to one person whose letters he particularly valued, he wrote, and this was in December of 23, "I really like your letters. They've got everything I like to discuss: food, politics, elections, scandalous topics, and ethnicity issues." Trying to keep it alive inside. In a recent interview, Rachel Maddow counseled us how to survive with our spirits intact during hard times to come. She says, if we learned anything during COVID, it should be not to let ourselves get isolated in the world of the internet, read real books from trusted sources, Don't withdraw. Make sure you are connected locally to flesh and blood people you can talk to and be with, because we're going to need each other. Kept in solitary confinement much of the time, Navalny had to try to do that with the connections he could manage. One of the books he read was a biography of Robert F. Kennedy, sent to him by Kennedy's daughter, Carrie. He wrote to Carrie Kennedy that he cried 2 or 3 times while reading the book, and he thanked her for a poster that she sent him. It featured a quote from a speech of her father saying that the effect that a ripple of hope multiplied 1,000,000 times is such that it can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance. Taken off to the worst of prisons in the Arctic Circle where he died, Navalny must have known that his greatest hope of free Russia would not happen in his lifetime. But perhaps he also knew his courage will ripple through the hearts of those who resist in ways we cannot even yet imagine. And we can hope that in those last frigid, white, endless winter days, he found in his own memory, in his own spirit, that invincible summer which no one could take from him or from the world. May he rest in peace, but may his spirit move down the years until the world is created anew in new life. I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing number hymn 108, My Life Flows On in Endless Song, and the gray hymnal. have ever loved and all that we have ever been stands with us on the edge of all that we aspire to create. A deeper peace, a larger love, a more embracing hope, a deeper joy in this life we share. One quick statement, and those words are attributed to Leslie Takahashi. I am not going to greet you at the door as usual, not because I don't want to speak with you, but just so I don't risk infecting you if I have something.